What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another Stokastic NHL Strategy Show presented by BetMGM. I am your host, Josh Harris. I see Jake in chat. I think he's home from his vacation, or he's on the plane with short shorts showing off the quads to the stewardesses trying to get some free drinks. Nonetheless, he's here. Joining me, as always, is my partner in crime, Slim Cliffy. How was your weekend?
Not too bad. Kind of sad that there was no hockey yesterday. I mean, I get it. NFL Sunday, you don't want to go up against the NFL all day long. Still kind of sucks having no hockey. Good games on Saturday night. I watched that Kings Wild game, and that was, I don't know, maybe the game of the season so far. Either that or that first Montreal-Toronto game. It didn't seem like the Wild were very happy with their performance. We'll talk about, they're on this slate here today. We'll talk about them a little bit later. But yeah, that was a great game. I went single entry Saturday night. Ended up cashing thanks to a empty net goal from Vladimir Tarasenko. Though if we could have gotten a couple assists, that would have been even better. But anytime you play single entry and you cash, you will take it and move along. So not a bad weekend. How about you?
Yeah, I ended up cashing on that Saturday night as well. I had Tarasenko. I also fell asleep before the Sharks game. I had Mrazek in net for the Blackhawks. Ended up working out, got into the cash, which was nice. I just wanted to give a shout out to our buddy, Saul Goodman, almost winning another Millie Maker last night, but he did turn 1,000 into a couple $100,000. I will be submitting my Christmas list to him shortly, but congrats to you. That was awesome. NFL, what a fickle beast, but no hockey. So I guess we had to play NFL if you're playing DFS, but we have a 9-game slate today. Five of the road teams have a 3.3 total or higher. This could be quite the slate. There's a lot of injury news. There's some goalie news. There's a lot of news, some lines being changed, which don't really make sense, but we'll get into that. But before we do, remember to hit the like and subscribe. Really helps us out. Anytime we get more likes, get more views, it helps us bring you guys more free shows. And who doesn't like free? I like free. Free isn't really free, but if you keep hitting that like and subscribe, we'll keep doing that. And once you subscribe, hit that notification bell to get alerts when our shows go live. So 9 games, we probably should get to it. We had a 12-gamer on Saturday. Somehow we got through the show without missing a game, but let's get right into it. First game of the night, we have the Florida Panthers with a 3.4 total heading into Boston. The Bruins have a 3 total. Sergei Bobrovsky and Linus Ullmark are confirmed. Brad Marchand is still out, although he did practice with the team over the weekend in a contact jersey, so he should be coming back maybe soon. The first thing I noticed, it is a somewhat larger slate, but Florida Panthers have a 3.4 total, not getting much ownership at all. I know the Bruins are a pretty good defensive team, but 3.4 total with a couple percents of ownership kind of had me interested in some Panthers here. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Boston is typically a very good lockdown defensive team, and I think we've seen that so far early in this portion of the season. But, on the last show, we talked about how good Barkov and Carter Verhaeghe typically have been together. That's still the case. 2.9 expected goals for per 60 minutes, 3.3 actual goals scored. Very, very reasonable price on DraftKings, 18-1, which is, that's perfectly fine. It's not too expensive. You can still fit in some better stuff. Over 21,000 on FanDuel, which still isn't that bad, but it's keeping them with almost no ownership, which I get. I mean, you go into that Patrice Bergeron matchup, and it can be a pretty brutal grinder of a matchup. At the same time, I don't know if I would get to Florida in single entry, but if I'm playing 20 max or if I'm playing 50 or 150 lineups, I don't know how you get to at least a little bit of Florida 1 here. You get Barkov and Reinhart on the top power play unit. And for us making fun of their top power play unit running both Aaron Ekblad and Brandon Montour, power plays look pretty good, at least from what I've seen. And the numbers bear that out, at least early on in the season. So I do like that Florida top line here quite a bit. Like I said, I just don't know if I'm going to be getting to them in a single entry here tonight. One thing to note about Boston is last game, I think they're at home against Arizona. They switched up the right wingers about halfway through the game, and David Pastrnak ended up skating and finishing the game with Patrice Bergeron, while Craig Smith moved down to the second line. I didn't see a practice skate from them this morning, so we'll have to see when they get to warm-ups. But Pasta going to that top line would change a lot for me, particularly with him and Krejci haven't been very good defensively together. 2.4 expected goals against per 60 minutes in their time together, going back to a couple years ago when Krejci was still in the NHL. That's about average, league average, not even Boston average. So it kind of makes me want to think about that Florida second line a little bit with Tkachuk and Bennett and Rudolph Balcers. But I don't think I would want to dip down to a Florida second line on a slate this large. So for me, it'd be Florida top line or bust. Boston second line obviously is very interesting, especially where Pastrnak is skating over 19 minutes a game early on. Certainly looks like he's trying to boost his value in this contract season for him. So I think I don't have any problem dropping down to the Boston second line, but I would definitely want to see what their lineup is when warm-ups hit. So for me right now, I think this is more about playing Florida 1 than anything. I don't know if I want to go on the Boston side, but they already burned us once this year, I believe, in the first game of the season. Can they do it again here? I'm not sure, but I think just looking at ownership and price, Florida 1 is the line that sticks out to me in this game.
Yeah, it's mostly an ownership play. I don't like going into Bergeron, even if it is just Taylor Hall and Craig Smith opposed from Marchand and Pastrnak. It is still Patrice Bergeron. He is a little bit older, but he's still very good defensively. But 2% on a 9-game slate, I think if you're making, even 20 lineups, all you need is one of 20, get double the field. So I am interested on the Florida side in MME. I will say I want to make a note about that third line, the Florida third line. E2, D2, Luosterainen, Anton Lundell, Colin White. I was always a Colin White fan with the Senators. I like Anton Lundell. That two-man, they're very, very cheap. I don't know if you have to get there on this slate. You don't have to, go in against the Bruins with a third line, but I want to save them for a shorter slate. I just wanted to give it a mention there. On the Boston side, if it is Pastrnak up on that top line, I will have some interest there. I would imagine, with new ownership with him up there, they may get close to, double digits. So I would err on the side of caution in single entry there. But in MME, I like both sides of this game, especially if Pastrnak is up there. Moving to the blue line, Aaron Ekblad, always there. Montour is a good play if you can't spend up for Ekblad. Punting, I don't think there's anything to punt on the Florida side. On the Bruins side, if you're doing anything with the top or second line, I think Hampus is fine. Or Mike Riley punt would be fine because I think Brandon Carlo is out and I think Riley has moved up in the lineup.
Yeah, this is now at least 3, if not 4 Boston defensemen missing from the lineup. So you got to wonder, just how many more injuries can that blue line go through. But yeah, I agree with you. I think Mike Riley might see a few more minutes here tonight. So I don't mind him if you're going cheap. Connor Clifton's been playing 23 minutes a game early in the season. So if you want to go down full punt with him, I think that's probably the direction to go. Honestly, there's just not a lot for defensemen I want to take out of this game. Forsling not on the top power play, 4,800. That's not really appealing. I'd probably just rather play Brandon Montour, and I think Ekblad is just too expensive at 7,000.
Agreed. Before we get to the next game, I see we have a super chat from Nicholas Barrett, $49.99. Thank you very much. That is a big super chat. He says, took second in the top shelf Saturday night. Dallas won, St. Louis won, killed it. You guys are the best. Actually, you're the best because you won the big money in that contest. We don't make your lineups. We like to give as good of advice and lessons as we can. You're the one who clicks in your lineup. So congratulations to you. That is amazing. And thank you so much for tuning in.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And congrats again. Like Josh said, you guys are the ones making your lineups. We just try to give the best advice we can. It's your money. They're your lineups. So congrats to you. And hopefully you can bink again here real soon.
Let's move on to the next game of the night. The people's main event, maybe. The Arizona Coyotes with the 2.3 total heading into Toronto. The minus 500 Maple Leafs have a 4.5 total. That is large. Karel Vejmelka, not confirmed yet. I would be surprised if it wasn't him. And then Eric Kallgren going for the Leafs tonight. The Leafs are 2-1 on the season, but they have not looked great. And you see the ownership on the Leafs top line here. They're obviously in the best spot of the night, have the biggest total of the night, but 30% for 30% for Leafs won in this matchup. I don't know what to do. I might just go to that second line here. They're getting a little bit under double-digit ownership, and you still get two guys on the power play, maybe full power play stack. On the Coyote side, as much as I don't want to play them in a 2.3 total, they have an AHL goalie who just got banged up starting for them. The Leafs haven't looked great defensively. There isn't much on the Coyote side, but maybe some Boyd Keller. I don't know. What are you thinking?
Yeah, see, that's the problem here is that the Leafs haven't – there are parts of the Leafs lines that haven't looked great defensively. I don't think that second line of Tavares, Nylander, or Mulligan, I think they've looked good offensively. Don't get me wrong. Just they seem to be giving up a bit in their own end. The problem is Austin Matthews' line tends to take a fair bit of the top line matchup from the opposition, which means you'll get Matthews out against Boyd and Keller and Krause. And then, okay, if you want to avoid the Matthews matchup and you want to maybe dip down to Arizona too, like there's just nothing I would want to play on Arizona 2 or Arizona 3 or anything. Like there's just no offensive depth to this team. With Nick Schmaltz injured, they got, maybe Clayton Keller's the best playmaker. We can have that argument, but I think Nick Schmaltz is a pretty good playmaker. But you take him out, it's Clayton Keller and then just a bunch of guys. And Keller's going to be going right into the teeth of that Matthews matchup. I mean, we talked in their first couple of games how good Toronto 1 was last year. They're right back to being great this year. 4.2 expected goals for, 1.7 expected goals against per 60 minutes. Like they're being dominant at both ends. So like I think they just easily dominate the Arizona top line here tonight. And there's just no depth from the Coyotes. Like if you want to do like a one-off Nick Ritchie because he's on the power play and he's super cheap, I guess you can do that. But there's just nothing of interest for me on the Arizona side in this matchup, even with Kallgren and net. Anything can happen in a single game. But if I'm making 20 lineups, I'm not getting to Arizona. So I will probably be out on the Coyotes entirely here tonight. Should note, the Leafs did call up a bunch of guys. Nick Robertson, Victor Mete, Wayne Simmons, all got called up. Robertson, he's been around for a few years now, but he's still pretty young. I think he only turned 21 over the summer. He was skating on the second line in practice yesterday, but I think William Nylander was sick, and they're expecting Nylander to play today. So, those guys will probably all be in the depth, if they even dress. So there's just not a lot that I want to talk about as far as new players for Toronto 1 and Toronto 2. They are coming in with a lot of ownership. As you mentioned, the Toronto top line coming in nearly 30%. The second line, at 7-8%. I think it might actually end up a little bit higher. Especially in more casual low dollar contests, you'll see a lot of the more popular names like Matthews and Tavares be typically much higher owned than we have projected. But like I said, that Toronto second line has been pretty good offensively. You get two guys on the top power play unit. So if you want to do like a Toronto power play stack, I think that's just fine here as well. So I do love just going right back to a Toronto power play stack. Arizona had one of the worst penalty kills in the league last year. I don't see why it would be any better this year. Vejmelka can obviously, put up a big game for them. As somebody mentioned in our Discord earlier, pretty sure Vejmelka had a big game against the Leafs last year, but it was in Arizona. he could have a big game, but I don't see how Toronto just doesn't dominate from, pretty much start to finish. So Toronto power play for me in this game. I don't think there's really much on the Arizona side that I want to talk about. If Nick Schmaltz were still healthy, I think that would be a conversation, but Lawson Krause just doesn't bring a lot other than shots and hits to that top line. You don't get DK points for hits. So probably out on Arizona entirely. Toronto power play makes more sense to me, especially where Arizona had such a bad, like I said, had such a bad PK last year, and I don't see why it would be better this year. So love Toronto 1, love Toronto 2. For me, I would just go Toronto power play stack if I'm making a single lineup.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll add to Toronto is I preach this lesson all the time. This is an awful slate to one-off Austin Matthews. He's going to be the highest owned player on the slate. So if he busts, you're screwed. If he goes off, congratulations. You and 40% of your friends have that. And I'm sure most of those 40% have someone else coming along for the ride. So please don't one-off Austin Matthews tonight. There is a -120 chance that a one-off Austin Matthews wins the GPP tonight, and I will be eating crow on the show tomorrow. Anyway, moving to the blue line, Morgan Riley, power play quarterback. He's in my power play stacks. You don't have to. I wouldn't one-off him either. There's not much else there on the Leaf side. On the Coyote side, I guess JJ Moser on the top power play at 3K. He's still his projection's so funny. That can't be right. 0.05 points, but he is on the top power play at 3K. I don't mind that, but other than that, maybe Dyson Mayo for some shot blocks, but I'm probably looking elsewhere for defensemen.
Yeah, we should mention Shane Gostisbehere, 4,800 over on FanDuel. That's a pretty reasonable price. I know it's still a brutal matchup, but all you need is a goal, maybe an assist and a bunch of shots, and he's just fine. So don't mind him there. What I will mention about the Toronto D, it's through the early parts of the season, they're really spreading out the ice time. They have 5 defensemen playing between 18:30 and 21:30 a night. Morgan Riley down 2 minutes per game from his time last year. Now it's just 2 games, but if you're paying a super high price for somebody like Morgan Riley, if you're paying 6,400, he's one of the 5 or 6 highest priced defensemen tonight. You want him to play more than 21 minutes, even in a soft matchup like this. So he can definitely get there. In 21 minutes of ice time against this Arizona team. Let's face facts here. But I think unless I'm full power play stacking, I'd probably rather just take some savings and go to somebody like Giordano or Muzzin or something like that.
Fair enough. Let's move on to the next game. We have the Pittsburgh Penguins with a 4.1 road total heading into Montreal. The Canadiens have a 2.7. Casey DeSmith and Samuel Montembeault are confirmed. Same lines for the Penguins. It looks like Sean Monahan up with Suzuki and Caulfield. Dadonov, Dvorak, Gallagher, Duran, Doc, and Anderson are that third line. That makes Montreal one fully they were fully correlated with Josh Anderson there, but now with Monahan up there, they're cheaper, they're fully correlated, and they're not getting much ownership. That being said, not the best matchup. They do have a 2.7 total though. Casey DeSmith in that, I don't know. I think there's stuff to like on both sides here.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think part of it is Casey DeSmith being in net for Pittsburgh. He had every opportunity to kind of break out and be the top goalie for the Penguins, and he just hasn't been able to do it yet. I think he is a step down from Tristan Jarry, sorry. And where Montreal's coming in so cheap, I kind of do like the Habs here because, or at least the Habs top line, because like you said, perfectly correlated. You're getting Casey DeSmith, the backup in net, and Sean Monahan and Kirby Dach both look pretty good. I've watched every Montreal game so far this season. Yeah, fair enough. They've probably been Montreal's 2 best forwards through the early parts of the season, which is why I found it kind of surprising that they broke them up. But I think it's more about trying to bring balance to the rest of the lines rather than the way Monahan and Doc were playing, because they were playing extremely well. And like you said, they're coming in with low ownership, 3 to 4%. Over on DraftKings, they're cheap enough where they can be used as a secondary stack, so you can fit them in with your Toronto power play, or we'll get to a Dallas top line or something like that later on in the slate. So I kind of do like that Montreal top line. I don't know if I would go down to any other Montreal line. I know they're really cheap, but I kind of worry about ice time. Nick Suzuki's still playing quite a bit of ice time, but the rest of the guys are like 15, 16, 17 minutes at the most. So you're getting limited ice time against a pretty good Pittsburgh middle six. So I would probably stay away from the Montreal depth here. If I were to go to a line, it'd be Gallagher, Dvorak, and Dadonov. That looks like a pretty good two-way line to me. I think Dadonov has kind of been unfairly maligned, especially with what happened in Vegas. Gallagher obviously can put up a good amount of shots if he gets any amount of ice time. And Dvorak had a tough year at times last year, but I think he turned around along with the rest of the team when Martin St. Louis was hired. So, if you want a two-man like Dvorak and Gallagher or something like that, I think that's fine to go super cheap. But more than anything, it is that Montreal top line that it is standing out to me, because I think Sean Monahan, if he keeps playing the way he has, he would be an upgrade on that line over Josh Anderson. So don't mind Montreal 1, but obviously this is a big Pittsburgh 1 spot. The Montreal top line with Josh Anderson there really, really struggled defensively. They're giving up a lot of chances. If you watch the early Montreal games so far this year, you know how much their goaltending has bailed them out. And Sam Montembeault looks to be in net, not Jake Allen. Not that Montembeault is an awful goalie, but I think Jake Allen's clearly the better goalie of the two. And this is a pretty tough start for Montembeault. Pittsburgh 1's probably going to come in with heavy ownership. I would say they're probably going to come in 15%, maybe even climb to the high teens. So if you want to do like we do with Toronto and go with some sort of power play stack, I think that's just fine. But the thing is like I said, Montreal's top line hasn't been very good defensively, so I want to take advantage of that matchup. So I think just three-man stacking the top even strength line, Gensel, Crosby, Raquel, is the way I would go in this game. They're not super expensive on DraftKings. They're under 20K. Just over 22,000 on FanDuel, again with reasonable ownership, probably around 20, maybe 25%. It's a great spot for them, but I'd probably stay away from an over-owned second line for the Penguins here. If you want to add Malkin, if you want to add Rust to kind of give yourself some additional power play exposure, I think that's fine. But if I'm even strength stacking a line here tonight, it's the top Pittsburgh line. They've looked really good early in the season. Crosby, I think, had 6 points in 2 games or something like that to start the year. Unless Sean Monahan brings a completely different defensive dimension, I think that Montreal top line is still going to struggle defensively. So for me, I would just go either of the top lines. I do really like the Pittsburgh top line here tonight, despite the ownership.
Yeah, it's a Pitt 1 game for me, or a Pitt power play. I think if you don't power play stack, I think full stacking that top line will lower your ownership, because I think people are going to leave off a Raquel and add in a Rust, because it's not too much more expensive on DraftKings. So unless you're full power play stacking, I think full power play or full stacking the top line is what I'm going to do. In 1 to 3 lineups, not sure I'm going to get to Montreal, but I do like that top line. They are super cheap. I think they are a nice filler for MME. You want a 2-man Dvorak Gallagher for 6,400 going into that, second line. I think that is fine as well. So moving to the blue line, if you're power play stacking, Chris Letang, obviously I think Chris Letang makes for a fine one-off as well. If you are fading Pitt and you want a little bit of exposure there. On the Montreal side, I think, if you are using the power play, Chris Weidman, for whatever reason, is still running the power play. Caden Goulet is a fine punt. Jordan Harris still min-priced.
Yeah, Jordan Harris, probably the guy I would go to, min-price 2,500 on the Montreal side. I mean, I know what you mean by if Weidman's still running the power play, but they just don't have anyone else. You know what I mean? With Mike Matheson injured, there's just no one else that can actually run the power play on that team. So I agree with you. Is this a Jeff Petrie revenge game? Is that what we're going to see here tonight? 4,300. over on DK, 4,900 over on FanDuel. Obviously returning to Montreal for the first time since being traded in the offseason. Traded? Signed? I think it was traded.
Yeah, he was traded.
Yeah. He looked pretty good after Martin St. Louis was hired last year, and he's playing like 21, 22 minutes for Pittsburgh. If you don't want to pay all the way up for Letang, I think, saving a couple thousand and going to Jeff Petrie makes a lot of sense here tonight.
I concur. Ladies and gentlemen, are you having trouble getting matches on Tinder? Then I have a promo for you. $10 for 10 days of Stokastic Platinum. Use promo code Hardwood. That's right, promo code Hardwood. Or click the link in the description to sign up. NBA is almost back, and it means it's time for our best promo of the year. Get full access to all of our data, tools, that's promo code Hardwood, for every sport. NBA, NHL, NFL, PGA, soccer, esports, everything we've got, as well as a new lineup generator, which allows you to build and export up to 20 lineups using our data. That's 80% off our normal platinum pricing, and you get access to the lineup generator. Again, that's promo code Hardwood, or click the link in the description below to sign up. So what's the lineup generator? Glad you asked. I will let you know. Lineup Generator is the perfect tool for building winning lineups for any NBA DFS contest. Our cutting-edge algorithms analyze player data and trends to help you make the best choices for your lineup. With our easy-to-use interface, you can have the lineups built in seconds. No more hours spent researching players. Get an edge on your opponents by using Lineup Generator's powerful contest simulations. Again, promo code Hardwood. Yeah. I don't know who came up with that promo, but they deserve a raise. Also, that lineup generator is awesome for NFL and NBA, and I've heard rumblings that it's going to be coming for NHL, so be on the lookout for that. Yeah, let's move on to the next game of the night. We have the Anaheim Ducks with the 2.4 total heading into Madison Square Garden to face my Rangers. The Rangers have a 3.5 total. So, Ryan Strome back in Madison Square Garden, 3,500 power play 1. On almost any other slate at that ownership, I would say, yeah, that's a really good spot. Going into Igor Shesterkin, not my favorite option here. That being said, they're super cheap, fully correlated. Rangers don't have an elite PK by any means. The only reason they have good PK numbers is because of Igor Shesterkin. So maybe you go to some Ducks top line here. On the Rangers side, John Gibson has looked pretty bad to start this season. The Rangers top line with Capo Caco has looked very good. The Rangers second line with Alexis Lafreniere up there has looked very good. So I think there's a lot to like on the Rangers side here.
Yeah. I was kind of surprised by the Rangers ownership here. The top line of Kreider, Zibanejad, Kako, 18,500 on DK, coming in under 5% ownership. Over on FanDuel, 20,600 coming in at around 5%. Like, there isn't a lot of ownership here tonight, which kind of it might seem surprising, but then you look at Toronto in such a great spot. Pittsburgh in such a great spot. There's, the Boston top line. There's the Colorado top line we'll talk about a little bit later. Even the Winnipeg top line. Like, there are a lot of pretty good top lines, some of them in excellent spots here tonight. So, I don't know if the Rangers top line comes in at like 3%, but I could definitely see them, 5, 6, 7%, something like that. And they've looked great so far this season. Like, for me, Capo Caco is probably one of the big storylines of the early parts of the season. I haven't watched every second of all the Rangers games, but it seems like whenever I do watch the Rangers, he's making very stellar offensive plays in the offensive zone that he wasn't making last year or the year before. Like, it really looks, I hate to say he's playing with more confidence because I don't know him. I don't know if he has more confidence or not, but it looks like that's the way he's playing, and he's playing like the guy that was a second overall pick a few years ago. Extremely small sample, but the offensive numbers, at least by shot generation and expected goal generation, have been massive for that Rangers top line here so far this season. it's a wonder what the Anaheim lines look like. We're gonna have to see when warmups hit, because they did change them down the stretch in their loss against the Islanders. They put Troy Terry and Adam Henrique back with Trevor Zegras. Zegras and Henrique is a duo we talk about a lot. Some of Zegras' best play has come with Adam Henrique playing alongside him. And Troy Terry, obviously, he has, he showed last year he's 30. He can easily be a 30 goal scorer. So, if that Anaheim, if Terry Henrique and Zegras look to be aligned here tonight, then I would probably have some interest. But 9-game slate going into Igor Shesterkin on the road just doesn't feel like a very good spot to do it. So I'm probably out on Anaheim entirely. If you want to one-off some guys, I don't have an issue with that, because I think they can definitely get on the board, especially if they stack that top line here tonight. But for me, this is about the Rangers I'll say top 2 lines, but top line more than anything, because I think the second line with their pricing is going to be a very popular filler here tonight. And I don't mind taking a high owned top line. It's just taking a highly owned second line always kind of bothers me. Lafreniere, must be said, has looked good so far earlier in the early parts of the season. 13 shots in 3 games, I think, and he's playing over 17 minutes a game. Pretty good from him. So, if you want to dip down to the Rangers too, that's fine. But I think, between the power play exposure, between how good Cackle looks, between pretty reasonable ownership, and what is a good matchup going against Anaheim, they kind of revamped their offense, but they certainly don't look to be great defensively, at least not so far this season. So, I want to get Zibanejad and Kreider as much as I can against that John Klingberg pairing. So I really do like the Rangers top line tonight. Considering their ownership and their price, they're one of my favorite top lines on the entire slate. So for me, it's about Rangers 1. If you want to go Rangers 2, fine. But I think more than anything, it's the Rangers top line in this game that should attract our attention.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there. And people are kind of like, oh, AK Mika Zibanejad, is he worthy of that? If you ever watch the Rangers power play, he sits at the dot like Alex Ovechkin and just rips one-timers. He plays the most out of anyone on the Rangers. So yeah, Rangers 1 for me. Igor is going to be one of the most popular goalies of the night. I'm probably not going to get the Ducks in 1-3, but I will say, depending on the lines, that's not really how leverage in NHL DFS works, but I would work in some very low-owned correlated Ducks if the lines work out the way that we want them to. On the blue line, Adam Fox probably is the guy if you're power play. If you're going if you're leaving off Capo Caco and you're going Kreider, Zibanejad, I think you add in Adam Fox on the blue line. Other than that, I think one-offing Jacob Trouba is fine. Again, Keandre Miller, price creeping up, but is okay. Zach Jones, min price. Power play, quarterbacking the second unit with Trouba at min price. I don't mind that there. On the Ducks side, you see John Klingberg down to 3,800. He is on the top power play. I don't know if I'll get to him in 1-3, but I would include him in my Duck stacks if I'm using them.
Yeah, and besides Klingberg, I'll throw out Dmitry Kulikov. At least he's playing 20, 21 minutes a game. He's a guy that can put up, some decent peripherals for a super cheap price. So he's one of the punty guys I have on my list for this one.
So let's move on to the next game of the night. This feels like an important game. The Vancouver Canucks, 2.9 total heading into Washington. The Capitals have a 3.2 total. Canucks are messing around with their lines, I think. Yeah, Podkolzin up to the top line. Third line is now Kuzmenko, Pettersson, Curtis Lazar. And now on the Capitals side, Alex Ovechkin hasn't scored a goal yet this season. The Canucks have looked awful defensively. This feels kind of like a perfect storm. But then again, it's the Capitals. I hate stacking the Capitals in DFS. So what are you doing in this game?
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see what the lineups look like because they were running different players in different spots. Ilya Mikheyev, they thought he might be able to play tonight. Doesn't look like he's going to be in. Like you said, it looks like Curtis Lazar is going to be playing with Elias Pettersson. And I'm just like, Why? You know what I mean? Like I just don't get it, man. He's a guy that could probably play well on the fourth line. I think he showed that in Boston last season. He can't play with Elias Pettersson. Like, who are we kidding? It really bugs me because Pettersson and Kuzmenko have looked really, really good so far this year for Vancouver. And like Washington's looked like a mess defensively so far this season. Now, we should note that Evgeny Kuznetsov did not skate this morning. Connor McMichael was on the second line as the center for Anthony Mantha, and then Dylan Strome staying on the top line. Now, they're saying Kuznetsov was kind of like a maintenance thing. It looks like he's a game time decision. Like I said, the Caps just look like they have just really lost a step defensively. And the goaltending has kind of let them down so far this season. I really do like the Vancouver side in this game. Pettersson and Kuzmenko are probably the guys that I would have the most interest in. It's just they're starting to really get expensive, right? Like Kuzmenko at 5,200 on DK feels like an expensive price. Only a couple hundred less than Nichushkin, virtually right in line with Adrian Kempe, more expensive than Victor Arvidsson and Arturi Lehkonen. With Curtis Lazar there on that line, it kind of worries me. And also, I want to mention Kuzmenko was moved off the top power play at the end of Vancouver's last game. The last two power plays Vancouver had, Kuzmenko was not there, and it was Brock Besser. So if you're stacking the Pettersson line, all of a sudden you have Elias Pettersson, Kuzmenko at 5,200 on DK, who's potentially no longer on the power play, and Curtis Lazar on the other side. So as much as I want to play Vancouver, these lines are really just screwing with whatever upside that they might have had. That Vancouver Pettersson line, reasonably cheap, because of Lazar. But I would probably just leave him off and then two-man stack Pettersson Kuzmenko. But then, Kuzmenko might not get the power play time. So all of a sudden you're two-man stacking a guy that's on one power play and then the other guy that's on the other. Them messing with the line so much just kind of makes me want to bypass Vancouver entirely here tonight. And I feel bad because I'm wearing a Vancouver jersey. I do like watching the Canucks. Maybe we see something different when warm-ups hit, but as long as Curtis Lazar is on that line, I really don't have any interest in Vancouver. And, maybe one-off Elias Pettersson, I think could be fine. But for me, honestly, I think I just kind of want to avoid this game altogether. Dylan Strome and Ovechkin look okay together. That top line is reasonably cheap. The Washington second line looks like it's coming in over-owned. So I'll be honest, there's just not a lot that I like in this game up front. They're really screwing with the lines, and I don't think, I don't want to play Curtis Lazar. I don't want to play, Connor McMichael if he ends up as a second line center. I don't want to play Pud Colson. I don't want to play, Tanner Pearson. Like the lines, they might work out for the team, but I just don't think they work out for DFS. So I'm going to be honest. I was interested in Pettersson and Kuzmenko when I started my research, but now I think I'm out. I think I'm out on the forwards entirely in this game unless I'm one-offing somebody.
Yeah. And one thing going for us, at least, it's a 7 p.m. Eastern start. Most of these games tonight are at 7 p.m. Eastern. So we will see lines for this game around 6:30. Maybe Mikheyev is in. Maybe they come. Maybe, Brucey Baby wakes up and is like, what am I doing? And put some good lines together. We'll have to wait and see. But if there is a usable line on the Canucks, there isn't right now. We'll find out in warmups, and hopefully, there'll be a very low-owned combination if someone good, like if it's not Lazar on that third line and Niels Hoglander comes back up. We don't know. But if there is a usable line at 6:30 p.m. Eastern for warmups, I will be interested. Cap side, I never know what to do with the Caps. I think maybe, a one-off TJ Oshie is fine. A one-off Ovechkin's fine. But other than that, not a big fan. Moving to the blue lines, Quinn Hughes at 6,200 seems a bit pricey. He's looked okay. I don't know. Same thing on Carlson, 6,700. I maybe do like a 2-man Ovechkin Carlson or Ovechkin Oshie Carlson, something like that. But these blue liners not really piquing my interest.
Yeah, I think Carlson's too expensive, 6,700. I think Hughes is fine for his price. He's certainly getting a lot of ice time, not shooting as much as we would like to see generally, but I don't really hate the idea of a one-off Quinn Hughes because, Vancouver does spread out their scoring. He might be on the ice for all the goals because of how much ice time he plays and all the offensive situations and all that. So I think a one-off Quinn Hughes is fine, but honestly, I'm with you. I just think the defensemen are too expensive in this game, and I'm probably going to bypass it entirely, other than maybe some one-offs like a cheap TJ Oshie one-off. I think is fine, or just even one-offing Alex Ovechkin for 8K is fine as well, but probably not stacking.
And we'll get to the goalies at the end. I saw some people asking about goalies. I have some goalies written down. We'll get to them at the end so we can talk about it for a minute. Let's move on to the next game. We have the Los Angeles Kings and their 3.4 total heading into Detroit. The Red Wings have a 3 total. Tyler Bertuzzi is going to be out for 4 to 6 weeks with an upper body injury. Jacob Vrana out tonight for personal reasons. The coach moving Kubalik up to the top line, which is nice. I really like that. Finally get him some top 6 minutes. Philip Zadina moves to that second line with Kopp and Perron. The one thing I don't like about the Wings here are their power play units. The first unit is Raymond, Zadina, Kopp, Elmer Soderblom, and Philip Hronik. Oh no, Moritz Cedars on unit, yeah. Excuse me. And then it's Kubalik, Larkin, Perron, Oscar Sundqvist, and Philip Hronik. Those power play units are frankly disgusting. I don't know why they just don't load up a power play unit. So it's going to be tough for me to do anything power play wise with the Wings. Looking at the King side, the first thing that stands out is the pricing. They are so cheap. They have a big road total in 3.4. They do have some ownership, which is a big concern, but they are so cheap.
Yeah, I do like the Kings top line here going against that Detroit top line. Like, Kubalik might be a good goal scorer, but that's pretty much all he brings. Like, he's not good in transition. He's not good defensively, et cetera, et cetera. Losing Tyler Bertuzzi off that top line probably takes the best playmaker that they have. Like, everybody hears the last name Bertuzzi thinks he's some grinder or something like that. But, Tyler Bertuzzi actually has pretty soft hands. He's a good passer, good playmaker. Take him away from Larkin and Raymond. Like, I have concerns about how that top line is going to play together. I don't know if Dominic Kubalik is going to finish the game on that top line, like, let's say. Yeah. So I'm out on the top line. I think the second line is passable with Perron, Kopp, and Zadina. Hopefully Zadina can kind of take a step like Capo Caco has for the Rangers. But quite honestly, with the spread out power play, with Tyler Bertuzzi gone, both lines coming in somewhat over-owned by our top stacks tool, at least on DraftKings. I think this is a spot where you can let Detroit go. And I'm going to go over on the Kings side. Anze Kopitar is not really shooting, but Fiala and Kempe have looked reasonably good together so far this season. They're allowing quite a bit defensively, but I'm not that worried against the Bertuzzi-less Red Wings top line. I think you're fine to go down to the second line for the Kings. We talk all the time about how good they were last year. They could generate a ton, but their ownership is really, really high. 10% on DraftKings, less on FanDuel, a lot less. But if you're playing on DK, they're going to be widely owned because they are a cheap filler that they can put in. So for me in this game, it's all about Kings 1. I don't care if they're 9 or 10% or whatever. I think this is a pretty good matchup for them. I'm passing on Detroit. Like, I don't know how you lose 2 guys out of your top 6 and then decide to spread out the power play. That talent on the power play even more. How you don't stack one power play, I don't know. So out on Detroit, in on Kings 1.
Yeah, I do really like Kings 1 here. Kings 2, a little bit over-owned for me. I will say, dipping down to Kings third line, I don't mind at all. If you need really cheap filler, Byfield, Velarde, Iafallo. Velarde min price on the top power play unit. He's looked pretty good to start this season. If you need a cheap filler tonight, Kings third line. I can't see Jake right now, but I think his eyebrow just raised when I said that. Moving to the blue line, Drew Doughty, 5K. If you're doing anything with the top line, he's the guy. Looks like Sean Dursey back in the lineup. 3,600 I am on board with as well. On the wing side, I want to play Cedar at 5,500. I just worry about this lineup, but he is a guy who can get you a combo meal. So for that price, I don't mind it. I think like when push comes to shove, I'd rather one off a Jacob Trouba type, but at 5,500, you can do worse. Philip Pronik, okay at 4,100. If you really need a punt, Oli Mata.
Yeah, Mata was the guy I was going to say. He's another one of the punts that I have. He's playing, I think, 20, 21 minutes for Detroit early parts in the season. So he's a punt guy. I don't mind here tonight.
Yeah. And how about some no house advantage? That's not knee house. That's no house advantage. It's bringing you the most dynamic sports platform available. It's a pick 'em based contest, kind of like Prize Picks, except you're playing against other people this time. You're not playing with yourself. Download the app, choose a contest, select your player props, and climb the leaderboard when you make correct picks. Test your skills versus the house. And 20x your entry if you hit all your picks. Bet up to 5 player prop over-unders or individual player matchups across every major sports league, including NFL, MLB, NBA, PGA, MMA, and NASCAR. Sign up now. There's a link in the description. Not as a catchy promo code, but there is a link in the description, and you get a first match deposit bonus of $50. Be sure to also check out our NFL lineup generator and projections for no house advantage when you can. Find in the video description below. Again, that's no house advantage. So let's get to these final 3 games. We have 10 minutes left. My screen just froze. So what game is next?
Yeah,
Colorado Avalanche. There we go.
Colorado, Minnesota.
Yep. Colorado with a 3.3 total heading into Minnesota. The Wild have a 3.1 total. It's probably going to be Georgiev for the Avalanche. Philip Gustafsson is confirmed for the Wild. Dina Vason going rogue, putting Tyson Yost up on the top line. Matt Zuccarello got banged up in morning skate. He's questionable tonight. Second line is Marcus Foligno, Joel Eriksson, Ryan Hartman. So Joel Eriksson, Marcus Foligno always go out against top comp. I kind of liked how that line looked a little bit with Yost there defensively. With Hartman there, I'm not sure if they're going to be an elite defensive line. They're going to see a whole bunch of McKinnon, Ranton, and Lehkonen. That line is getting high ownership, not as high as the Leafs. It could be a nice pivot off the Leafs top line tonight, going to Colorado 1. These Wild lines are a bit rough for me. I don't know if I'll full stack anything. I don't really know if I'm going to get the Leafs or the Wild, to be honest.
Yeah, as soon as I saw these lines, all I could think of was The Godfather. Like, look how they massacred my boy. Like, Tyson Jost on the top line. Are we serious here? With all that said, I like Minnesota 1 here tonight because the way they run their lines, they send Minnesota top line, the Kaprizov line, avoids all the top matchups. And, that Colorado second line hasn't looked great so far this season. Pretty much a new line combination with Newhook moving up and Evan Rodriguez being brought in. And then the third line, like the depth just isn't strong. So I don't mind if Zuccarello plays, like even just 2-man and Kaprizov and Zuccarello or one-offing Zuccarello here tonight. Minnesota's top line coming in with very reasonable ownership. I think this is a good matchup going against the depth of Colorado. I'll probably avoid the Avs top line. I usually avoid them. I usually avoid lines going into Minnesota. That definitely hasn't paid off so far this season. But going against Joel Eriksson and Marcus Foligno usually isn't a great idea. So, if I'm 1 max, single entry, 3 maxing, something like that, I'm staying away from the Colorado forwards here. This is a Minnesota 1 game to me.
Yeah. I wish the Colorado top line ownership was lower because I would take stabs against them going against Eriksson, Foligno with Hartman there. Push comes to shove, still probably prefer Toronto 1 over them. Let's move to the blue line. Pick, any one of the Avalanche blue liners. I think in this game, if you're using Colorado on Cale Makar makes sense. Otherwise, I think I'd probably go with Devin Tays or Bowen Byram. On the Wild side, Cale and Addison still on the top power play unit. Not doing too much with it right now, but at 3K, I still think that is fine. Jacob Middleton, good for some shot blocks.
Yeah, Middleton might be the guy for shot blocking, especially if Colorado can generate offense at will, like Los Angeles did the other night against Minnesota. If you don't want to play the Colorado forwards, one thing I frequently do is just one off Cale Makar. Even though he's very, very expensive, he's a guy that can just single-handedly win a game for them and win a DFS tournament. So I really do like Cale Makar as a one-off here tonight. If otherwise, I'm probably not playing the middle price guys. I'm just going all the way down to somebody like Byron or Addison or Middleton.
Yep. Let's move on to the second last game of the night. Of course, it's a 6 total, and of course, I like both sides. The Winnipeg Jets with a 2.8 total heading into Dallas. The Stars have a 3.2 total. They're not at home, but a shout out flow chart. They're getting low ownership tonight on Winnipeg 1. I like low-owned Winnipeg 1. I never really liked chalky Winnipeg 1. Again, on the other side, really like Dallas 1 here. This is one of the lower totals of the slate somehow, but they are expecting some goals. Still a 6. It's not a 5.5. I think it's both top lines for me.
Yeah. Dallas has started using their top line against opposing top lines more, and that means it's a pretty bad matchup for the Winnipeg top line. That Dallas top line, very good offensively, very good defensively. They play a lot with Miro Heiskanen, who's also very good defensively. Jake Ottinger has looked very, very good to start this year, just like he did last year. So, absolutely. If you're 20 maxing 50, 150 lineups, if you're playing a lot of lineups, you definitely want to get some Winnipeg 1 here tonight because you should get good leverage on them between the price and the matchup. My problem with playing Dallas 1, they're really spreading out the ice time amongst the Dallas forwards. I don't know if anybody's looked at that so far this year, but I think it's every Dallas forward is between 12 and a half and 16 minutes a game, and Tyler Seguin is leading them, leading all the forwards in ice time. So, do I want to pay $17K to go up against Connor Hellebuck if the guys might only play 16 minutes? Don't know if I want to do that. So I think Dallas 1 is perfectly fine to play. I just really worry about ice time. And when you factor in Connor Hellebuck, like it just seems like a real tough matchup to be a top 2 stack. So this is probably a game where I'm avoiding stacking any of the lines, and I'm probably looking more for one-offs, like maybe a one-off Tyler Seguin, one-off Mason Marchment. Those two guys have looked good together so far this year. I think you can one-off Joe Pavelski if you want to take advantage of the Winnipeg penalty kill because it was bad last year and it looked real bad in their first game of the season. So, I think one-offing Joe Pavelski is something you can definitely do. Dallas 1 would be, or Winnipeg 1 would be the line I would stack if I was taking any line because I'm just real concerned about those Dallas top minutes.
Yeah, and I talked about liking both sides of both top lines. I also really like both goalies in this game. We'll get to that at the end, though. Moving on to the blue line. Don't know why Morrissey's on the top power play unit still. I'm gonna ham and haw about that for the rest of the season. Miro Heiskanen, fine for me. Also, Colin Miller, Esa Lindell, Nils Lundqvist, Ryan Suter, all usable. Not much else on the Winnipeg side besides maybe Dylan DeMello and Brendan Dillon.
Yeah, I think it's Ryan Suter for me. He's playing like 22, 23 minutes, and Dallas is splitting the power play pretty evenly, the power play time on ice. So he could get as many or more power play minutes than Miro Heiskanen. So don't mind Ryan Suter, especially if you're wanting to avoid, the Dallas guys that might not play a lot. The Dallas forwards, sorry.
Yep. Couple minutes left. Let's get to this last game. Carolina Hurricanes have a 3.3 total heading into Seattle. The Kraken have a 2.7 total. I would imagine it's going to be Freddie Anderson tonight. Philip Grubauer is confirmed. This is a tough matchup for Seattle. Not a big fan of their lines either. I think if I had to pick or choose a line here, it would be the Wenberg, Schwartz, Bjorkstrand line. Just, I just like Bjorkstrand, and he's under 4K. Wenberg, 2,600 on the top power play. You're getting some top power play guys for cheap. That being said, Carolina, very, very good penalty kill. So another thing you notice, Carolina top line, almost no ownership. Carolina second line, almost no ownership. So I think this could be a sneaky late hammer spot.
Yeah, I do like that Wenberg, Bjorkstrand, Schwartz line as well. They've looked really good here to start the year. Schwartz and Bjorkstrand, 3.3 expected goals per 60 in their 40-plus minutes here so far this season. They'll probably avoid that checking line of Jordan Stahl, Jesper Fast, and Paul Stastny. And anytime I can get a line against Carolina avoiding that line, that's where I would go. So yeah, I do have that Schwartz line circled. They might come in with somewhat high ownership, but if it's 3 or 4%, I really don't care. On the Carolina side, it's the top line for me. I really do like the top line here, but again, it's kind of that Dallas problem where the top line might not see a ton of minutes. Like I'm pretty sure Teuvo Teravainen's under 17 minutes so far to start the season, and Seth Jarvis is around the same. So you're really banking on the Seattle goaltending being awful again, because Seattle's actually looked pretty good. Like their skaters have looked very good to start this year. Their goaltending's been awful. As long as the goaltending isn't awful, this is a tough matchup for Carolina. So I think it's the Carolina top line. I agree with you that I would choose out of this game, coming in with good ownership, reasonable price. I do like them. On the Seattle side, it's the Bjorkstrand, Schwartz, and Wenberg trio. They're one of my more favorite filler stacks on this slate.
Concur. And as always, the show is presented by BetMGM. Coming up after us, we have the No House Advantage Monday Night Football show with Eitan and Jeff. And if you're playing on No House Advantage, don't forget we have free projections on the site and a lineup uploader tool to help you mass multi-enter and take advantage of this overlay. And how can you forget about promo code Hardwood? 10 days of Stokastic Platinum for just $10. Check that out. Link in the description below. A couple minutes left. Let's get to the goalies here. I wrote down Thatcher Demko, 7,300. Connor Hellebuck, Johnny Quick, Jake Ottinger, Philip Grubauer, and if I'm paying up, it's probably going to be for Igor Shesterkin.
Yeah, Igor is the expensive goalie I have on my list as well. For cheaper goalies, I think it's Linus Ullmark or Ville Husso for me. Depends who starts. Obviously, it could be Nedeljkovic starting for the Wings, in which case I'm probably not as excited. But Husso, if he does get the start. Over on FanDuel, I'll also add in those guys. Plus Jake Ottinger, relatively cheap on FanDuel. Don't mind him here tonight.
Yep. And before we get out of here, let's give the people their hat trick picks. My hat trick pick is going to be Capo Caco.
Ooh, I like it. I'm going to go to a team that I was kind of bad-mouthing a little bit earlier. I do like his price and his lineup slotting, Mr. TJ Oshie from Washington.
Very nice. For Slim Cliffy, producer Slim Cliffy too. I should just give a shout out to Cliffy. He's been producing for us, doing a great job. I am Josh Harris. We will be back tomorrow. We'll see you then. Good luck, everybody.
Good luck, everyone.